AITA for opening the envelope after my sister claimed my husband was her baby's father? I'm Wendy, 42, and by the time Vanessa made that little speech at my parents' dinner table, I had already learned that betrayal does not always kick down the door. Sometimes it sits next to you at family dinner, passes the potatoes, and waits until dessert to ruin your life. Mark had been my husband for years. Vanessa had been my older sister for longer. And my parents had spent my entire childhood acting like I was difficult for noticing when she hurt me. I was the one who brought extra napkins. I remembered who hated onions. I picked up the rolls when my mother texted, "Can you grab something on the way?" I checked on my dad when he forgot to refill his prescriptions. I kept birthdays on a calendar because half my family treated remembering someone's day like a heroic act. Vanessa did not remember birthdays unless there was a photo opportunity. She was 45, beautiful in the way that made strangers forgive her before she even spoke, and loud enough to make every room adjust around her. Growing up, she could take my sweater, stain it, and tell our mother I was being weirdly possessive when I wanted it back. She could show up late to family dinners and everyone would wait. If I got irritated, Mom would say, "Wendy, don't be jealous. Your sister just has a big personality." That phrase followed me into adulthood. Vanessa forgot to pay me back? Big personality. Vanessa made a joke about my weight at Thanksgiving? Big personality. Vanessa flirted with my boyfriend in my 20s and told everyone I was insecure? Big personality. By the time I married Mark, I thought I had grown past it. I had my own marriage, my own routines, my own quiet life. I thought being a grown woman meant my sister could no longer make me feel like a child waiting for someone to notice I had been hurt. Mark seemed to notice at first. When we were dating, he would squeeze my hand under the table when Vanessa interrupted me. He would say afterward, "I don't know how you put up with that." He was calm, polite, the kind of man my parents loved because he said thank you after every meal and helped carry folding chairs back into the garage. For years he looked like my safe place. Then slowly, he became another person asking me to make room for Vanessa. The first time I noticed it, we were at my parents' house for my father's birthday. Vanessa sat beside Mark on the couch even though there was space everywhere else. She leaned over him to grab chips from the coffee table and laughed too hard at something he said. Her hand landed on his arm and stayed there half a second too long. I looked at Mark later in the car and said, "That was weird." He frowned. What was weird? Vanessa. The touching. The whispering. He gave a little laugh like I had said something embarrassing. "Wendy, she's your sister." That's exactly why it felt weird. He sighed and turned on the blinker. "You're making it into something." I let it go because that was what I had been trained to do. Let it go. Keep the peace. Do not make a scene. Do not give Vanessa the satisfaction. But small things kept happening. Vanessa started texting Mark directly instead of texting the family group chat. First it was normal enough. Pictures from a barbecue. Questions about what time we were arriving. A meme about something my father said. Then it became late-night messages. Mark would be on the couch, phone angled away from me, smiling at the screen. I would ask, "Who is it?" And he would answer too quickly. "Work." Or, "Nobody." Or, "Just your sister being dramatic." At one dinner, Vanessa joked, "Mark is the only person in this family who understands me." My mother smiled like it was cute. I looked at Mark. He was looking down at his plate, but he was smiling. When I asked about it later, he rubbed his forehead and said, "Can you not turn every Vanessa thing into a federal case?" That hurt more than the joke. Sounded like my mother. Sounded like my father. It sounded like every person who had ever told me I was too sensitive because Vanessa had better timing. I started paying attention. I noticed Mark changed his phone password. He said it was because everyone should update security once in a while, which would have sounded reasonable if he had not kept the same 4-digit code for nearly 10 years. I noticed he began taking calls in the garage. I noticed Vanessa stopped making jokes about him in front of me and started making private jokes with him across the table. The kind where she would say one word, he would look at her, and they would both laugh like I had walked in late to my own marriage. Still, I did not confront him. Not then. Part of me was scared of being right. Part of me was even more scared of being wrong, because if I accused Mark and it turned out to be nothing, I knew my family would turn it into the proof they had been waiting for. See, Wendy was jealous. C. Wendy could never stand Vanessa getting attention. C. Wendy always makes things ugly. The first real clue came from the tablet. Mark and I had a shared tablet we barely used. It lived on the little charging stand near the kitchen, mostly for recipes, streaming shows while cooking, and checking email when one of our laptops was dead. Mark forgot it still had some old sync settings attached to his account. One Thursday night, I was looking up a recipe for baked chicken when a message preview slid across the top of the screen. Vanessa. After dinner, she won't be able to pretend she still has a marriage. I stared at it so long the screen dimmed. Then another preview appeared. Vanessa. You said you wanted her to be the one to leave. This will do it. My fingers went cold. Not shaky. Cold. I tapped the notification, but the message thread asked for Mark's password. His new password. The one I did not know. For a few seconds I just stood there in the kitchen with the chicken still wrapped on the counter, and the tablet glowing in my hand. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator humming and Mark moving around upstairs. I did not run upstairs. I did not scream. I did not throw the tablet at him. I took screenshots. I took them because I knew my family. I knew Mark. I knew Vanessa. And I knew if I walked into a room with only my pain, they would call it suspicion. If I walked in with proof, they would have to at least choose their lies more carefully. After that, I stopped asking Mark questions and started collecting answers. The tablet showed more than he realized. Not full conversations but previews. Enough fragments to build a shape. Vanessa. I moved the appointment. Stop panicking. Mark. You told me the dates matched. Vanessa. They will when I explain them. Mark. Wendy can't find out from me. Vanessa. She won't. She'll find out from us. There were deleted message notices too. Little gray hints where something had been removed but not fully erased from every device. I learned to photograph the screen with my phone before the notifications vanished. I made a folder organized by date. I backed it up somewhere Mark had no access to. Then I checked what I could legally access. Our bank account had a few transfers I did not recognize. Not huge amounts. 300 here. 500 there. One memo said appointment. Another said help. Vanessa's name was attached to 2 of them. When I asked Mark a week earlier about a missing chunk of money, he said he had helped his coworker with an emergency car repair. Vanessa did not own a coworker's car. There was also a hotel receipt in Mark's email trash from a night. He claimed he was helping his brother organize storage boxes. He had not deleted it permanently. Maybe he thought trash meant gone. Maybe he had gotten careless. The receipt was for 1 room, 1 night, paid with a card from our joint account. The rideshare history hurt in a different way. Not because it proved the worst thing by itself, but because it was so ordinary. 2 rides. 1 from Vanessa's apartment. 1 to the hotel. A driver named Samir. A tip. Timestamps. The ugly little details that make betrayal feel less like a movie and more like bookkeeping. The pregnancy clue came from a photo Vanessa sent to the family group chat. It was not the ultrasound photo. It was a picture of her hand holding an iced coffee with the caption, "Baby made me crave this." In the background, partly under the cup, was a clinic printout. Most people would never notice it. I noticed because by then I noticed everything. I zoomed in. The estimated due date was visible enough to read. So was the appointment date. A week later, another tablet preview from Vanessa mentioned a different date. Vanessa. Tell him the first date was an estimate. Men don't understand this stuff. Then another one. Vanessa. If Mark thinks it's his, he'll leave Wendy faster. That was the moment my anger changed. Until then, I had been angry at an affair. Angry at my husband. Angry at my sister. But that message showed me something colder. Vanessa was not just confessing. She was constructing. She was building a story where the pregnancy became a weapon and I became the obstacle everyone needed to step around. The numbers did not prove Mark was innocent. They proved Vanessa was not honest. And Mark knew enough to be worried. His search history on the tablet was not long, but it was enough. Paternity test during pregnancy. Can affair affect divorce settlement? Wife leaves after affair, who gets house? Is emotional distress considered in divorce? I sat at the kitchen table after finding those searches and laughed once. Not because anything was funny, but because the sound came out before I could stop it. He was not searching how to tell your wife you betrayed her. He was searching consequences. The next morning, I called a divorce lawyer named Ellen Price. Her office was in a plain building with a coffee machine in the lobby, and chairs that looked like every waiting room chair in America. I remember that because I expected a place where my life changed to look more dramatic. Instead, there was a stack of outdated magazines and a receptionist eating yogurt behind a computer. Ellen was in her 50s, practical, and did not waste words. I laid out everything I had. Screenshots, receipts, bank transfers, the hotel charge, the clinic timeline, the search history. I kept apologizing for not having more complete messages. She held up one hand. "Stop apologizing for evidence you gathered while being lied to," she said. "This is more than enough to begin protecting yourself." "I don't want to do anything illegal," I said. "I don't want to drain accounts or post anything online. I just don't want them to make me look crazy." "Good," she said. "Do not empty accounts. Do not post online. Do not threaten anyone. Preserve everything. Change your personal passwords. Turn on account alerts. Make copies of anything you lawfully have access to. From this point forward, assume every reaction you give them is something they may try to use." Then she leaned back and said the line I held onto for the next week. "Do not give them a meltdown they can use. Give me documentation I can use." So that was what I did. I kept cooking dinner. I kept going to work. I kept sleeping on my side of the bed beside a man who checked his phone under the blanket and thought I did not notice. When Mark asked why I was quiet, I said, "Tired." He accepted it too easily. The family dinner invitation came on a Monday. Vanessa sent it to the group chat with a string of sparkle emojis. "Vanessa, everyone needs to be at Mom and Dad's Friday. No excuses. I have news that affects the family. Linda, is everything okay? Vanessa, it will be. I just need everyone there." Rachel, my cousin, replied with a joke. "Rachel, that sounds either expensive or dramatic." Vanessa, maybe both. Mark read the messages while standing at the kitchen counter. I watched his thumb hover over the screen. "You saw the dinner thing?" he asked. "I did. We should go." I looked at him. "Should we?" He swallowed. "It sounds important." "Does it?" His eyes flicked up to mine, then away. "Can you just be normal that night?" It was such a stupid thing to say that I almost smiled. "That depends on what you think normal means." He did not answer. On Friday, I put the envelope in my purse before we left. It was not thick. I had not printed everything. Ellen had advised me not to turn dinner into a courtroom. Just enough to stop a lie from becoming the official family history. Inside were copies of selected screenshots, the bank transfers, the hotel receipt, a simple clinic timeline based on what Vanessa had shown in her own photos and messages, and a printout of Mark's search history. I wore a plain sweater. I did my hair. I put on earrings Vanessa once told me were sweet in a quiet way, which was her way of calling something boring. In the car, Mark kept both hands on the wheel even at red lights. "You're quiet," I said. "Just tired." I looked out the window and said nothing. My parents' house smelled like roast chicken, garlic, and the lemon cleaner my mother used whenever she wanted everyone to think she had not been stressed all day. Serving dishes were already on the dining table. Wine glasses caught the light. My father was carving meat in the kitchen. Aunt Carol stood near the sink, wrapping foil over a tray. Rachel was opening a bottle of sparkling water. Vanessa was already seated. That should have been my first public warning. Vanessa never sat early unless she wanted an entrance without having to walk. She had chosen the chair where everyone could see her face. She wore a soft cream sweater and had one hand resting loosely over her stomach. She smiled at me like we were old friends. "Wendy," she said, "you look nice." "Thanks." Her eyes dropped to my purse. Just for a second. Mark barely ate. He pushed potatoes around his plate until Aunt Carol looked at him and said, "Mark, you've been quiet tonight." He gave a stiff smile. "Just tired." I almost laughed again. Dinner began normally enough, which somehow made it worse. My mother asked Rachel about work. My father complained about the neighbor's dog. Aunt Carol asked if anyone wanted more green beans. Forks clinked. Someone spilled a little wine and my mother jumped up too fast with a towel. Vanessa waited until plates were half full and everyone was settled. Then she tapped her glass with her fork. It was not loud, just ting ting ting. My mother looked up first, already smiling. She loved announcements when they came wrapped in the right packaging. Vanessa stood slowly, one hand on the table and one on her stomach. "I know this is unexpected," she said, and her voice trembled in exactly the practiced way I remembered from childhood. "But I can't keep lying just to make other people comfortable." The room changed. Mark's fork stopped moving. Vanessa reached into the folder beside her chair, pulled out an ultrasound photo, and walked it around the table. Not to my mother first. Not to my father. To me. She placed it beside my plate, right next to the mashed potatoes. "Since Wendy hates surprises," she said, smiling with wet eyes, "I'll make this simple. Mark is the father." Silence dropped so hard it felt physical. My father's hand froze around his wine glass. My mother made a soft sound, half gasp, half warning. Aunt Carol looked from me to Mark. Rachel whispered, "Oh my God." Mark went white. Not pale. White. And he did not deny it. That was the part one knew I would remember forever. Not Vanessa's face. Not the ultrasound photo. Not my mother's first words. Mark's silence. The man who had promised to love me sat beside me with his mouth slightly open, and let my sister tell the room he had gotten her pregnant. Vanessa started crying, but carefully. No ugly sobs. Just enough to shine. "We didn't mean for this to happen," she said. "Mark and I didn't plan to fall for each other. I know Wendy will hate me, but I can't lie about love anymore." My mother turned to me, not Mark. "Wendy," she whispered, "please, don't make a scene." There it was. My marriage had just been dragged across the dinner table, and my mother's first instinct was to manage my volume. I looked at her. "You're asking me not to make a scene? This is a lot," she said, her eyes darting toward Vanessa's stomach. "Your sister is pregnant. Stress is not good for her." "The baby is innocent," I said. "The adults in this room are not." Richard set down his glass. "Wendy, this is not the time." I turned to him. It became the time when she put the ultrasound beside my dinner plate. Mark finally moved. "Wendy." I raised one hand without looking at him. "Not yet." Vanessa pressed a napkin under her eyes. "I knew you'd do this." "Do what?" "Make it ugly." I looked at the photo beside my plate. "No, Vanessa. You made it ugly. I'm deciding whether it stays stupid." Rachel covered her mouth. Aunt Carol stared at the table like she wanted the wood to open and swallow someone, but for once it did not look like she wanted it to be me. My mother said, "Can we just talk about this calmly?" "We can," I said. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. Mark's chair scraped back an inch. Vanessa's face changed. It was small, fast, and there. The wet-eyed softness tightened into something sharp. I placed the envelope on the table. "Before everyone decides what kind of woman I'm supposed to be tonight," I said, "you should know what kind of story Vanessa is trying to sell you." Mark leaned toward me. "Wendy, stop. We can talk outside." I looked at him then. Really looked at him. His hands were clenched under the table. A tiny muscle jumped in his jaw. "You had months to talk like a husband," I said. "You chose an audience." Linda's voice rose. "Wendy, private things should stay private." I nodded toward the ultrasound photo. Adults do not ambush someone with an ultrasound photo beside the mashed potatoes and then ask for privacy. Aunt Carol made a small sound. It might have been a laugh. It might have been shock. I opened the envelope. I did not dump everything. I did not throw papers across the table. I took out the first screenshot and placed it in front of my mother because I knew she would try hardest not to see. It was Vanessa's message preview. After dinner, she won't be able to pretend she still has a marriage. My mother stared at it. "What is this?" she asked. "A message from Vanessa to Mark," I said. From the tablet Mark forgot was still syncing previews. Vanessa snapped. "You were spying on us?" I looked at her. "You were sleeping with my husband and planning a dinner ambush. Let's not pretend the tablet is the moral emergency." Richard reached for the paper. His face darkened as he read. I placed the second screenshot down. You said you wanted her to be the one to leave. This will do it. Mark stood halfway. That's out of context. Great, I said. Explain the context. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Vanessa's voice trembled again, but now it sounded less practiced and more panicked. I was emotional. I said things because this has been hard. Then this should help, I said. I placed the bank transfer copies on the table. 3 payments from Mark to Vanessa, I said. 1 labeled appointment. 1 labeled help. 1 with no memo. When I asked him about missing money, he told me he was helping a coworker with a car repair. Rachel leaned forward. Mark. Mark rubbed his face. It was complicated. Vanessa said, I needed help. Then why lie? Rachel asked quietly. Nobody answered her. I placed the hotel receipt down next. I did not describe the room. I did not need to. The date, amount, and payment method were enough. My father looked away first. That almost made me angrier than the rest. He could look at me when he wanted me quiet. He could not look at proof. Linda whispered, Wendy, please. Please what? I asked. Please stop making people uncomfortable. I was comfortable enough for everyone when I was being humiliated. Vanessa put both hands over her stomach. You're attacking me while I'm pregnant. No, I said. I'm defending myself after you used your pregnancy as a weapon. Stress is dangerous for the baby. Then you should not have brought the baby into an ambush you planned. Aunt Carol picked up the first screenshot again. Her hand shook a little. Vanessa, she said, did you plan this? Vanessa's mouth opened. I planned to tell the truth. No, I said. You planned to tell a version that made me collapse in front of everyone. Mark stepped closer to my chair. Wendy, enough. I pulled out the clinic timeline. This is enough, I said. For tonight. Vanessa went still. I slid the paper toward the center of the table. It was simple. Dates only. The appointment date visible in Vanessa's own photo. The estimated due date she had accidentally shown. The second date she later implied. The hotel receipt date. The messages about changing the appointment. My father adjusted his glasses and frowned. What is this supposed to mean? It means the timeline Vanessa gave Mark is not the same timeline shown in the paperwork she accidentally shared, I said. It means she changed the due date more than once depending on who she was talking to. Vanessa's face flushed. Pregnancy dates shift. They can, I said. But messages like this make me curious. I placed the last screenshot down. If Mark thinks it's his, he'll leave Wendy faster. The room went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator kick on in the kitchen. Rachel whispered, Vanessa. Vanessa grabbed for the screenshot, but Aunt Carol picked it up first. That's not what it means, Vanessa said. What does it mean? Aunt Carol asked. Vanessa looked at Mark. Mark looked at the wall. That was the first time my mother did not immediately defend her. I turned to Mark. And you knew enough to search paternity testing during pregnancy. His head snapped toward me. What? Linda said. I took out the final printout and placed it beside his plate. Paternity test during pregnancy. I read. Can affair affect divorce settlement? Wife leaves after affair, who gets house? Mark's face twisted. You went through my search history? It showed up on our shared tablet, I said. The same tablet you used because you got careless. This is more complicated than you think. No, I said. It's exactly as complicated as I think. You cheated. You knew Vanessa might be lying about the timeline. You still let her plan a public humiliation because you thought if I walked out looking unstable, you could call it my choice. He stared at me. There it was. Not a confession exactly. Worse. Recognition. Richard cleared his throat. Maybe everyone should take a breath. I looked at him. That's what you say when you don't want to choose. But not choosing has always meant choosing Vanessa. Linda flinched. Vanessa started crying harder now. This time it was less pretty. I can't believe you do this to me, she said. I'm your sister. I looked at her for a long second. My sister would not have placed an ultrasound photo beside my plate like a party favor. Mark said. I didn't know she was going to say it like that. I laughed once quietly. That's your defense? I was going to tell you. When? He looked at the papers. Soon. Before or after I left crying, and you got to tell everyone I abandoned you during a difficult situation? He said nothing. I gathered the papers I did not want to leave behind and put them back into the envelope. The copies on the table stayed there. Let them look. Let them sit with it. Let them decide whether they wanted to keep calling me dramatic while proof cooled beside the chicken. My mother reached toward me. Wendy, honey, don't leave like this. I stood. Like what? With everyone upset. I looked around the table. My father's face was stiff. Aunt Carol's eyes were wet. Rachel looked furious. Vanessa was shaking. Mark looked trapped. Everyone was fine when I was the only one upset, I said. Linda's hand dropped. Picked up my purse. Mark followed me before I reached the front door. Wendy. Wait. I did not wait. I stepped onto the porch. The air outside felt cold and clean after the hot dining room. The porch light buzzed above me. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Mark came out without his jacket. We can handle this without lawyers, he said. I unlocked my car. No. Please. Just talk to me. You had a chance to handle this like a husband, I said. Now you can handle it through my lawyer. His face tightened. You're really going to blow up our marriage over this? That sentence did something useful. It killed whatever tiny trembling part of me had still been looking for the man I married. Mark, I said, our marriage is not a balloon I popped. You and my sister dragged it behind a car, and then acted surprised when I pointed at the rope. He looked away. I made a mistake, he said. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. You built a trap and handed my sister the microphone. His eyes filled, but I had learned by then that tears are not the same as remorse. Sometimes they are just frustration leaking out. He lowered his voice. What if the baby is mine? I opened my car door. Then the baby will have legal rights and adults who should have behaved better. But my divorce does not depend on a paternity test. Wendy. No private conversations. No showing up. No calling my friends. Ellen Price will contact you. I got in the car and drove away with my hands steady on the wheel. The family group chat exploded before I reached the end of the street. I did not read it until I was parked in the lot of a grocery store 2 miles away, sitting under a yellow light with my engine off and my purse on the passenger seat. Linda. Everyone please calm down. Vanessa. I can't believe she did that while I'm pregnant. Richard. No more accusations in writing. Rachel, accusations? Vanessa announced Wendy's husband got her pregnant at dinner. Aunt Carol. I think everyone needs to stop pretending Wendy caused what happened tonight. Linda. Carol, please. Vanessa. She stole private messages. Rachel. Vanessa, why did your due date change? Vanessa. I am not discussing my medical information with you people. Rachel. You discussed it when you put an ultrasound next to Wendy's plate. Then Mark texted me privately. Mark. Please come home. We need to talk. Mark. I didn't know she would do that. Mark. I know this looks bad. Mark. Please don't let lawyers make this worse. I did not answer him. Vanessa texted me too. Vanessa, you are cruel. Vanessa. Stress is dangerous for the baby. I hope you're proud. Vanessa. You always hated me. That one almost got a response. Almost. Instead, I opened the family group chat and typed one message. I won't discuss my marriage with people who watched me be humiliated and asked me not to make a scene. The baby is not my target. The lies are. Any further communication about Mark, Vanessa, or the pregnancy can go through legal channels. Then I muted the chat. I spent that night at a hotel paid for with my personal card. Not the hotel Mark had used. A different one, clean and quiet, with a front desk clerk who did not know I had just watched my life split in half between roast chicken and mashed potatoes. I did not sleep much. I watched bad television with the volume low, and kept seeing Mark's face when Vanessa announced it. Not shock at the affair being revealed. Shock at the timing. Shock at the script going wrong. The next morning, Ellen called me before I called her. I saw your email, she said. Are you safe? Yes. Good. Do not go home alone if he is there. Do not discuss settlement. Do not discuss paternity. Do not argue and text. We are going to preserve evidence, protect accounts appropriately, and file. The word file landed heavy. I thought I would cry when she said it. I did not. What about the joint accounts? I asked. We follow the rules, she said. You don't drain anything. You document balances. You change personal passwords. You turn on alerts. You move your direct deposit if appropriate. You do nothing that looks reckless. Okay. And Wendy? Yeah. Let them create noise. We will create a record. So I created a record. I changed passwords to my personal email, banking login, phone plan, cloud storage, and the old shared accounts Mark had forgotten existed. I downloaded statements. I photographed valuables in the house when I went back with Rachel 2 days later to get clothes and documents. Mark was there. He looked terrible. Unshaven, red-eyed, wearing the sweatshirt I bought him 2 Christmases before. There was a time when that would have softened me. He stood in the living room while Rachel waited near the door with her arms crossed. Can we have 5 minutes? He asked. No, Rachel said before I could answer. He glared at her. This is between me and my wife. I looked at him. You made it between me, you, my sister, my parents, Aunt Carol, Rachel, and a plate of chicken. He closed his eyes. I didn't want it that way. You wanted me humiliated enough to leave quietly. I panicked. You searched divorce settlements. He opened his eyes. I was trying to understand what could happen. You were trying to manage consequences before you managed honesty. He stepped closer. Rachel straightened. I love you, he said. I looked at the man I had eaten breakfast with for years, the man who knew how I took my coffee, the man who had watched my family minimize me, and then decided to use the same weakness against me. No, I said. You loved being seen as a good husband. Those are different things. I packed 2 bags. Clothes. Medication. Important papers. My grandmother's ring. A framed photo of me with Aunt Carol from years ago. I left behind the wedding album. Mark watched me carry the bags out. As I reached the door, he said, Vanessa said she was sure. I stopped. There it was again. Not, I'm sorry I betrayed you. Not, I hurt you. Not, I lied. Vanessa said. You're 44 years old, I said. You do not get to hide inside my sister's sentences. He looked down. That was the last time I spoke to him without lawyers copied somewhere. The divorce filing did not magically fix anything. It did not make the pain neat. It did not stop Mark from sending long emails at midnight about confusion, pressure, loneliness, mistakes, and how complicated feelings can be. Ellen responded to the ones that mattered. I deleted the ones that did not. Vanessa tried to reclaim the victim role immediately. She posted nothing publicly, probably because someone advised her not to, but she worked the family phones like she was running a campaign. She called my mother crying. She called Aunt Carol saying I had endangered her pregnancy by interrogating her. She called Rachel and got hung up on after 3 minutes. Rachel told me later. She kept saying you attacked her baby. I told her the baby didn't print the screenshots. That made me laugh for the first time in days. The paternity issue moved where it belonged, into legal channels. Not group chats. Not dinner tables. Not whispered speculation over coffee. Mark could pursue what he needed to pursue with attorneys involved. Vanessa could answer questions with people present who knew how to document them. I refused to let anyone make the baby the center of my anger. That mattered to me. The baby had not betrayed me. The baby had not typed messages. The baby had not booked a hotel room or moved a due date in a conversation or sat silently while my sister placed an ultrasound beside my dinner plate. The adults had done that. My parents took longer. At first, they tried the usual approach. Soften the disaster by asking me to soften myself. My mother called 3 days after the dinner. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again. Then my father texted. Richard. Your mother is very upset. Please call her. I stared at the message and thought about all the times I had been upset and still expected to bring dessert. I did call eventually, but I put it on speaker while sitting in Ellen's parking lot before an appointment because I wanted a hard stop. My mother answered like she had been crying. Wendy. Yes. Oh, honey. Her voice broke. This family is falling apart. I watched people walk in and out of the building with briefcases and coffee cups. Normal life. Everywhere. Always. The family did not fall apart because I showed proof, I said. We just didn't want everyone upset. You were fine with me being destroyed. You just wanted me to do it quietly. She inhaled sharply. That is not fair. Neither was asking me not to make a scene before asking if I was okay. Silence. Then she said very softly, I didn't know what to say. You never do when Vanessa is wrong. That's not true. Mom. One word. That was all it took. She started crying again, but I did not comfort her. That may sound cold, but I had spent my entire life managing her discomfort after Vanessa hurt me. I had no more room. My father got on the line. Wendy, he said, we can talk about this like adults. I almost smiled. Adults don't ambush someone with an ultrasound photo at dinner. He sighed. Your sister made a poor choice. No. A poor choice is forgetting to bring the salad. This was planned. We are not defending what she did. You defended it in the moment that mattered. He had no answer. I said, I am not coming to family dinners. I am not discussing Mark with you. I am not listening to anyone tell me to consider Vanessa's stress, unless that sentence starts with what she did to create it. And I am not going to keep pretending peace means everyone gets to hurt me as long as they do it in a dining room. My mother whispered. So what are we supposed to do? Sit with it. Then I hung up. Aunt Carol became the surprise I did not know I needed. She called me a week later and said, I should have spoken up years ago. I was quiet. She continued, that doesn't help you much now. I know, but I want you to know I saw it. I saw how your mother reacted. I saw Vanessa's face when you took out that envelope. She wasn't heartbroken. She was angry she had lost control of the room. That sentence stayed with me, because that was exactly what had happened. Vanessa had not wanted truth. She had wanted theater. She had wanted the kind of scene where I broke down and everyone gathered around her because pregnancy made her untouchable. She wanted Mark cornered, me humiliated, and my parents too shocked to question anything. The envelope changed the script. Not by making me powerful all at once. Real life does not work that way. I still cried in the shower. I still woke up at 3 a.m. remembering old conversations and realizing new lies. I still found myself reaching for my phone to text Mark about stupid things before remembering he was no longer my person. But the envelope kept the first story from becoming the only story. That mattered. A month after the dinner, Mark's attorney sent a letter that made him sound like a confused husband trapped in an emotional situation caused by unexpected pregnancy-related revelations. Ellen read it, made a noise through her nose and said, absolutely not. Her response was precise, dry, and beautiful in the way only legal writing can be beautiful when someone is trying to bury you politely. She referenced the dinner announcement, the prior messages, the evidence suggesting coordination, the financial transfers, the search history, the fact that Mark had not denied the affair at the time of the public announcement, the fact that I had not harassed anyone, posted publicly, drained funds, threatened Vanessa, or interfered with any pregnancy-related medical choices. The narrative, Ellen told me, will not be that you abandoned him during a crisis. The record will show he helped create the crisis and attempted to benefit from your reaction. That was the first time I felt something close to relief. Not happiness. Not victory. Relief. Vanessa's credibility kept cracking in smaller ways. Rachel, who had stayed in the group chat mostly to observe, sent me screenshots now and then after asking if I wanted them. Sometimes I said no. Sometimes I said yes. In one exchange, Vanessa wrote, Vanessa, I never said the date was certain. Everyone misunderstood. Rachel, you said Mark was the father at dinner. Vanessa, because he deserves to be involved. Rachel, that is not the same as certainty. Linda, please no more screenshots in this chat. Rachel, then stop rewriting what happened in a chat full of people who were there. Aunt Carol replied with a thumbs up. I saved that one. My parents did not cut Vanessa off. I never expected them to. They helped her with rides. They worried over her appointments. They spoke to her gently. That hurt, but it did not surprise me. The difference was they stopped asking me to participate in the lie. When my mother texted, I hope someday we can all sit down, I answered. Not with Mark. Not with Vanessa. Not to make you feel better. She wrote back. I understand. I did not know if she did. But she stopped pushing. Mark tried one more time to see me privately. He waited outside the place where I was staying with flowers, which might have worked on a different woman in a different story where flowers erased hotel receipts. I stayed in my car and called Ellen. Then I texted him with my lawyer copied. Do not come here again. All communication goes through counsel. He looked at his phone, looked up at me, and for a second I saw anger flash across his face. Not grief. Not regret. Anger that the old channels were closed. That helped too. People think closure is one big conversation where the person who hurt you finally explains everything in a way that lets your brain rest. I did not get that. I got emails, receipts, a lawyer's calendar, password changes, separate accounts, a storage unit, a new routine where I bought groceries for one, and stopped automatically reaching for Mark's cereal. The first Sunday I did not go to my parents' dinner. My mother sent a picture of the table. No caption. I deleted it. The second Sunday she did not send anything. That was better. The divorce process continued. The paternity question continued separately, handled by people whose job was not to cry at dinner tables. I did not wait for the result to decide whether my marriage counted as broken. It did. Even if the baby turned out to be Mark's, he had betrayed me. If the baby was not Mark's, he had still betrayed me and then tried to let Vanessa use the possibility as a weapon. Either way I was done. A few months after the dinner, I went back to the house one last time with a scheduled time, paperwork, and Rachel beside me. Mark had packed some of my things badly. Kitchen items mixed with bathroom towels. Books upside down. A framed picture of us wrapped in newspaper like he thought I might want it. I left it on the counter. Rachel picked up a box labeled miscellaneous and said, "You okay?" I looked around the kitchen where I had once stood with a tablet in my hand and felt my life turn cold. Not always, I said. But right now, yes. On the way out, I noticed the shared tablet still on the charging stand. Dead battery. Dust on the screen. I almost took it. Then I didn't. I had what I needed. The final conversation with my parents happened in their living room, not at the dining table. I chose the living room on purpose. No serving dishes. No wine glasses. No place where my pain could be treated like something interrupting a meal. Linda looked smaller than usual. Richard sat with his hands folded. My mother said, "We owe you an apology." I waited. She glanced at my father, then back at me. "I should have asked if you were okay that night." "Yes," I said. "You should have." She swallowed. I was shocked. I was betrayed. Richard said, "We handled it badly." "You handled it the way you always handled Vanessa," I said. "You protected the loudest person and asked me to absorb the damage." My mother cried again. This time I did not feel the old pull to fix it. "I don't know how to undo that," she said. "You don't undo it by asking me to come back to normal," I said. Normal was the problem. Richard nodded slowly. "What do you want from us?" That was the first useful question either of them had asked. "I want distance from Vanessa. I want no updates about Mark unless they are legally necessary. I want you to stop using family as a word that means I have to bleed quietly. And I want you to understand that if you invite me somewhere and surprise me with either of them, I will leave and I will not explain myself." Linda wiped her face. "That sounds so final." "It is." She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. That was the closest thing to accountability I got from them. It was not clean. It was not a movie apology. My father did not suddenly confess years of favoritism in a dramatic speech. My mother did not become a different woman overnight. They were uncomfortable, defensive, sorry in pieces, and still more worried about the family image than they wanted to admit. But they knew I was done pretending. That changed the room. Vanessa sent one final message from a new number after I blocked her old one. "Vanessa, one day you'll regret choosing bitterness over family." I read it twice. Then I answered, "No, I regret mistaking silence for peace." I blocked that number too. The last I heard, Vanessa was still telling different versions depending on the audience. Mark was still trying to sound like a man who had been swept into a situation instead of a man who helped build it. My parents were still navigating the consequences of a family structure that had always depended on me being the quiet one. As for me, I signed what needed signing. I answered what needed answering. I let Ellen handle the parts that belonged in documents instead of arguments. I built a smaller life at first. Quiet dinners. Clean counters. A phone that did not light up with Mark's lies or Vanessa's performances. Sundays where I did not buy rolls for people who expected me to swallow humiliation with butter. I used to think keeping peace meant keeping everyone together. Now I know peace can be the sound of your own front door closing behind you after you stop volunteering to be the table everyone else eats on. And when people ask what happened at that dinner, I don't say my sister ruined my marriage. I say my sister tried to use my marriage as a stage. My husband handed her the microphone, and for once I brought the script they did not know I had. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.